First of all, welcome again to everyone here in the room and also those of you online to our session now, Just Transition Made by Women. So you're here, you're interested, and I hope that you will learn something, at least one thing, from this session and take away something back to your regions. What we will do in the panel, we will look at women's position in business and examine the challenges that women around the globe are currently facing in their entrepreneurship journey and the role that women can play in the transition journey. Why are we actually doing this? If you were here yesterday, you may have heard the Commissioner Ferreira, saying that women are an untapped potential. And for me, this really spoke. This is why we're here, because women are an untapped potential. They are increasingly, I'm happy to say, at the forefront of sustainability efforts, from the grassroots movement to the high-level advocacy, so they're adding value at the policy level. And they bring unique perspectives and solutions that prioritize the community needs, equity, and environmental justice. And the Just Transition process also provides and brings opportunities for women, especially in renewable energy, the green jobs, and sustainable agriculture. So the Just Transition is an opportunity for us to address inequalities, to create new workplaces, and reinvent, in some cases, regional identities. And we heard about this yesterday, about the reinvention of regions, the identities that they'd lived with for many generations, moving on to a new identity in the sustainable future that we are transitioning to. We're here today, these 2 days, to talk about the Just Transition Fund, or because of the Just Transition Fund. We're helping, of course, as you all very well know, the people and places most affected by the consequences of transition towards climate neutrality. So we're focusing on supporting the most vulnerable groups, including women, the youth, and the elderly. And we're really focusing on equal opportunities for all of the stakeholders. And the involvement of women in those decision processes is, of course, helping to ensure that the policies are equitable and effective. And we're linking the session, so women in the policy making, in the decision making, but also women in entrepreneurship. So, of course, entrepreneurship in general is a way of regions allowing the possibility of boosting their economies and increasing innovation. But women in business, women in entrepreneurship, we aren't quite there yet. Only globally, about 1 in every 3 entrepreneurs is a woman. So we still have some way to go to reach this untapped potential. So, as I said, today we're looking at women's engagement and women entrepreneurship in those regions which are transitioning, both in the EU but also globally, to get some inspiring examples for you to go forward with in your own regions. Our speakers, we have great speakers, will share with us their experience of the work that they're doing, the programs that they've been involved in, the projects they've been involved in, how these are bringing upskilling opportunities for women, giving greater economic independence, and in the end, bringing a greater resilience for regions in the face of the transition to climate change. We have several parts to our discussion this morning. The first part, and I'll invite Clara in a second, we have a presentation from one of our colleagues in the Just Transition Platform Secretariat to present the Boosting Female Entrepreneurship Catalogue, which is being prepared and soon to be published. And then I give you an early warning, we will do a Slido poll, several questions for you, so please get your phones ready. I'm not sure if the Slido code isn't there yet, but it will be there, so please be prepared for a Slido poll, and then we will move on to our panelists after that. But first of all, as I said, I'm happy to invite Clara Cassert onto the stage, please. So Clara is part of the Secretariat, yes? And she's supporting us in DG Regio with the implementation of the Just Transition platform. And she's working here on the JTP groundwork and the JTP Knowledge Hub capacity building programs. Clara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Catherine, and good morning, everyone. I'm indeed speaking on behalf of the Just Transition platform today. And as some of you may know, the Just Transition platform has a knowledge hub. On that knowledge hub, you can find a range of publications on just transition topics. And I'm here today to present one of our newest publications, which is called Boosting Female Entrepreneurship, a Catalogue for Just Transition Regions. That's a publication that I prepared together with my colleague Larissa Neuthel. And if you go, oh, I have a clicker here, so I can go to the next slide myself. Let's see. There we go, wonderful. Similar to most of the publications on the Knowledge Hub, this is a publication that has been written for local and regional governments that are planning and implementing their just transition. And the aim of this publication is to introduce why it's important to support female entrepreneurship in a just transition. The publication has a range of inspiring examples from different regions that are working on this. Sorry about that. I want to talk to you about the why of supporting female entrepreneurship. Oh, there we have it, wonderful. So if we first go to that question of why should we support women in setting up their business in a just transition region, we can say there are many big advantages, but two stand out, being that it's a way to really promote gender balance in a region, but also boost the economy of that region. From the perspective of women, it's a really great opportunity to be involved in the new sectors, the new green sectors that are being set up in the region from the very beginning. So to really establish the gender balance in that new restructured economy from the beginning. If we look at it from the perspective of regions, we often hear that there's a lower participation of women in the labor market. And the opportunity for women to start their own business is for regions also an opportunity to diversify the labor pool, to ensure that there's wider participation and acceptance in the Just Transition project. And what we did for this publication is that we researched a range of interesting examples in Just Transition regions and other regions, and we were able to divide them in 5 action areas, which I'm trying to show you on the screen. There we go, wonderful. So those 5 action areas, I'll be saying a bit more about them. They all have their own specific challenges and opportunities. I'm gonna leave that part of the discussion to our panelists, as I know that they will be sharing about that. And I'll leave the examples for the publication, but I'll briefly introduce those 5 action areas. One of them is incubation. So regions can use the Just Transition Fund to set up business incubators in their regions. And this is an opportunity to ensure that those business incubators have a wide-ranging program that also supports women and other underrepresented groups. And local governments can also really be the facilitator in this respect. They can ensure that business incubators in the region are connected to local innovation agents, to associations of female entrepreneurs, for example. And related to that, there's capacity building, because often there is a good business incubator in a region. So it can be a question of ensuring that there's an initiative that helps those business incubators set up a program that reaches women as well. Or maybe it's just about outreach, ensuring that the business incubator is also able to reach women. And another thing that local governments can do is ensure that the resources that are available in the region to promote entrepreneurship are widely shared. Because entrepreneurs often say that it's very hard for them to just know where to find the correct information, know what is available in the region. So advertising that online, ensuring that economic development offices and labor offices have that correct information is very important. And then the next action area is a really important one, and studies have shown that that's a big one for women, namely funding. Oh, I need to go one back now. Perfect. So funding, many studies show that it's a lot harder for women to find funding for their enterprise than it is for men. And there are several things that regions can do to help in that regard. They can, in their calls for proposals, ensure that they prioritize gender balance in the project evaluation criteria. They can also ensure that the investors in the region are connected to associations of women entrepreneurs so that they can be supported. And a next step they can take, if in the region women are really experiencing a lot of trouble in finding that financing, is they can set up a targeted funding program. One thing to keep in mind here is that it's important that funding always goes hand in hand with incubation to ensure that the funding is used in the best way possible. And then there's education. So taking it a step back, entrepreneurs often say that it was not a logical career path for them. They were never introduced to entrepreneurship as an option when they were in school. And to ensure that all genders and people of all age in education know about the possibilities of entrepreneurship, local governments can work with organizations in the region to really present female entrepreneurs, to bring female entrepreneurs to schools and have them present about their jobs. There's also an opportunity to work with higher education institutes, such as universities and colleagues, to set up a specific course in diverse and green entrepreneurship. And a final area that we looked at is peer learning. That's also an important one. So research often shows that women have a higher risk perception of entrepreneurship as opposed to men. And one of the things that really helps in seeing yourself as an entrepreneur is seeing that other people are also doing it and are having success in their business, and that lowers risk perception. So local governments can work with associations of women to set up kind of platforms for peer learning, knowledge sharing, finding a mentor. And I would refer you to the publication to explore the examples that go with all these action areas, which you can find with the QR code here. And I just also wanted to mention that the Knowledge Hub has a whole range of publications on social inclusion and the just transition, so I'd encourage you to visit that as well. Thank you.
Clara, thank you very much for presenting the catalogue. I was following carefully the action areas, and I mean, as you were investigating this, as you were preparing this, did you find in the regions where you were grabbing this information, did you find the advantages that they had already seen from promoting female entrepreneurship? Did you get feedback from them about the advantages that they had found in taking these steps?
Sorry, I didn't hear you very well.
Did you, in the action areas that you've presented in the catalogue, you were interacting with regions to get these examples of best practice and the things that the steps they had taken? Did you also get from the regions the advantages that they saw in taking these steps, in promoting female entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. They share many examples of reasons why it's very helpful to promote female entrepreneurship. Often there's a knock-on effect, for example. If they promote female entrepreneurship, they notice that female entrepreneurs often employ other women and are thus able to promote gender balance in the region that way as well.
If you could give one tip, so you have all of the areas, but if there was the first thing that a regional authority should do, what would the first thing be to try and make progress in this area of female entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is really to speak to the female entrepreneurs in the region. Just ensure that you know what their problem is. Is there something that is not going well? What was especially helpful when they were setting up their enterprise? What did they miss? So asking those kind of questions to the people that are involved, that are the people that would benefit from an extra initiative, would be a first step. And also speaking to the business incubators in the region. Is there an incubator? Are they working with women's associations? Who are they reaching with their programs? Are they working with innovators? So that kind of thing is important to know. And I'd also say having a good look at what a national framework is like. So are people inhibited or encouraged by the regulatory framework? Social protection policy, for example, can be very different in many regions, in many countries. So how does that influence people's ability to take up entrepreneurship?
Thank you, Clara. I think we're going to hear more about this from our speakers. I have one final, very short question. Is the catalogue already available, or do people have to wait a little bit before they can find it?
The catalog is available online. You can find it with a QR code that was on the screen, and we'll also be sharing it in the chat for the online audience.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Clara. So before we move on to our panel, which is I think, the highlight of our session, but as I said, we will have a Slido interaction with you, a Slido questions. You have the QR code here. You can also join it, as I did, by the JTP October 24. So if you could get yourselves hooked up, and then when you do, you will find this question waiting for you. What are the barriers preventing women's engagement in your respective regions? So what is stopping women at the moment from engaging in this process of just transition, or from engaging in entrepreneurship? And as you put your words in, we will have our word cloud. I'm sure you've all seen this before, and the words, the more they're repeated, the bigger they get. So we still have a number of, so far, and this is fantastic, of course, because it shows how complex the barriers are. If there was just one thing, we could probably solve it quite easily. But when we have so many different areas that we need to address, this is why our job is complex and is difficult. But stereotypes is coming up here. So stereotypes, this I imagine, but you can tell me later, you can tell us later, the stereotypes of what women's engagement and women's role in entrepreneurship. The financial barriers, this is something that Clara already spoke about, the risks, unemployment, and role models. The role models are not yet there. We will have role models for us later, role models of people who have gone through this process successfully. Gender bias, old habits. This is, as I say, incredibly complex, showing how many different factors are at play here in our objective of bringing women higher engagement in our regions. Thank you very much for this, and I'm encouraging our speakers to focus on the things which they identify with, and they that speak to them, that they've also encountered in their work and in their own experience. Thank you. Then the next question we have for you is, what are the sectors where more female entrepreneurship is needed, if you can identify them? Do you think there are particular sectors? We had the example yesterday from the Netherlands of the technical sector. Thank you very much again for the great presentation. So we heard that the difficulty of women, they feel that they're not wanted perhaps in technical jobs, and the employers are thinking that women don't want to come to those kind of jobs. So which sectors are we looking for more female entrepreneurship? Okay, so this is interesting. We have sectors, we have engineering, we have STEM, energy, nature restoration. We also have decision-making, so which is, of course, underlying all of these things, that if women are not in the decision-making processes, then the issues which are particularly important to women, which can prevent them from participating in the process or from building their entrepreneurship, building their businesses, these are not necessarily taken into account. I see decision-making is still one of our biggest issues, and then the sectors, I think perhaps the ones where you might traditionally have seen fewer women. So technical, engineering, technology research, politics comes back to decision-making. Who's in power, who's in charge here, who's making the decisions, and able to put the right framework in place. A couple more participants are typing, and then we'll soon close and move on to the next question. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your input there. As I say, looking not just at the sectors, in fact, but the framework around the sectors. So the question here, what are the biggest challenges and the common stereotypes women in entrepreneurship face? I don't know if green was perhaps coming from the previous question, or it's a challenge that we're facing. I think many of the women in the room or online maybe identify quite strongly with some of these stereotypes and challenges which we're seeing reflected here. Probably we've all come up against these in our careers, in things in our working day, in our working lives, the things which we're facing that people assume are true about women, which are not necessarily the case, or if they are the case, are perhaps an advantage. I see too emotional coming up in very large print. Is this a disadvantage? Is this something that women need to not have, or we need to avoid, or is it something, in fact, that we're bringing to decision-making and to policy-making and to entrepreneurship by having an emotional side to decisions? So our top challenges are emotional. So the challenges and the stereotypes, I think we're focusing on stereotypes of being too emotional. I'm going to write these down. Motherhood, of course, and gender role models. So the lack possibly of role models in these kind of places that people can look to and say, how did you do that? And we have our speakers who are going to be excellent role models of explaining how they've reached the place that they have and what they've done in their own environments. Thank you very much for this. I just note down gender role models, which is really emphasized here. And then we move on to our final question. What are the opportunities of the just transition for entrepreneurship? Of course, we're focusing here on women entrepreneurship, but in general, what are the opportunities of the just transition for entrepreneurship? The just transition journey is a difficult one. Bossy. I think bossy is possibly coming from the last question again. But what are the opportunities of just transition for entrepreneurship? What can we? The process is difficult. It brings its challenges, but of course, huge opportunities. We heard this yesterday, and I think that's also the theme of our panel now. What can we take from the process that regions have to go through? What positive side can we take out? The opportunities, transformation, new technologies, starting from an inclusive angle, a new way of life. Grassroots initiatives, I was just about to say it, then it pops up big. Grassroots initiatives, of course, this is fundamental to the Just Transition Fund, the whole Just Transition mechanism, how we're working, making sure, trying to get the stakeholders involved, both in the preparation of the territorial Just Transition plans, but also the implementation of the Just Transition Fund in the regions. So I think this is certainly an opportunity in the regions for the Just Transition, but also for entrepreneurship. I see the participants typing, and I don't want to cut you off, so we will just give 2 more seconds and see if we move on from our highlights here. So diversification, gender inclusion, and new role models and grassroots initiatives. Wow, thank you so much for sharing and for bringing all of these elements in. I'm sure they're going to come back very clearly in our presentations from our panelists. And here, I'm very happy to say, and I will ask them at their ease to come up slowly onto the panel to join me, onto the podium to join me. And I warn you, we have an all-women panel, so we've abandoned gender equality. We thought, given the subject that we're discussing, we will allow ourselves to have an all-women panel. And so I'm very happy, please, to welcome on the podium with me Florence Ras, who is the Director of the Brussels Liaison Office of UN Women. Florence. Apostolina Lina Tsatsambasi, the President of the energy cooperative WENCO, and the Greek Association of Women Entrepreneurs. Lina, you're very welcome. And Aileen Barron, the Managing Director of Green Acre Marketing and a participant in the Grass Sealing Project. And online, I'm very happy to say, from Indonesia, we have Catherine Kartika Winata, who's the Environmental Safeguard Specialist and the co-lead of the Just Transition Working Group of the Just Energy Transition Partnership Secretariat. So Catherine, you're also very welcome, and I hope that you can hear us clearly online. Thank you all very much for being here today and being willing to share your expertise with us. We will have two parts to our panel. First of all, we will look with Florence and Catherine at the challenges that women are currently facing from an international perspective. Catherine is in Indonesia. Florence, you have a great experience in UN Women. I've seen your CV all around the world, so I know you really have a huge experience to bring, not just from the European, but the global perspective. So how the challenges and good practices from supporting female entrepreneurship. Then we will have a second part of our session with Lena and Aileen, really concrete examples of projects in female entrepreneurship being implemented on the ground in just transition regions. Throughout the session, you have the opportunity to ask your questions online and Slido. Also online, of course, and the colleagues will let me know if there are questions. We would like to be as interactive as possible. I've checked this with the speakers. They also want it to be interactive, so please don't hesitate to put up your hand when we're at the question and answer stage, and we'll also have a chance at the end to have questions and answers. So with all of this, I am very happy to move on to, if I get my speaking points, to Florence. So Florence, please, you have the podium here, and please, we're looking forward to hearing your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and good morning, afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dear colleagues, dear partners, it's an honor for UN Women to take part in this event first, and at least I, as introducing a bit, would then like to set the scene not really on gender equality and inequalities. I think we all know that, not just women, but men as well, and that's where I'm quite happy. A lot of men, more men than the usual rooms I speak to, so that is already a positive sign. And particularly the role of local actors, authorities, civil society, trade unions, and others, I would say, in trying to grasp the just transition as an opportunity for gender equality. So it's about what can gender equality do for the just transition, but also what can the just transition do for women's rights and equality. I think all the data, evidence, research shows that if the just transition is not gender equal, doesn't include women and girls both as actors, leaders, and protagonists, but also their demands and needs, we're going to fall short not just of fulfilling rights, but of the just transition to be effective and to be precisely that opportunity. Now, if we want to think a bit in terms of, I don't want to bore you with definitions, but what it concretely means, it means that indeed the centrality of gender equality, but also care policies, and I'll come back to that because it didn't come up too much. It came up at once or twice, and I think this is one of the key cornerstones to switch, the perspective. If policies and programs don't take those into account, we will not uphold right. That's what I said before. So meaning that it is a question of inclusion, and it is a question of fairness, environmental fairness, but it's also a question of economic efficiency, growth, and inclusive development. Now, we've mentioned it, I think we all know it, but women have persistently been in an unequal place, I would say, in the labor market, and maybe the employment and the job creation angle of the transitions and the just transition are here very important. And this means, indeed, that access to resources, but also natural resources, land, finance, technology, knowledge, but also mobility have been major constraints. This means that we're actually cutting off largely, and I'm talking also more maybe from a global south perspective, because UN Women's not really programming or active in the European or EU countries, but more in Africa, Latin America, but also middle-income economies, transitioning economies, which I think makes a clear link here. And if we look at it as, an opportunity for job creation, women's inclusion, I think we have from our standpoint, 3 key messages, I would say. And one that does not come up too much, but which is important, it's not sufficient, but it is important, is the normative and legal framework around it. I think I'm sure that all of your countries here in the room, and most of the world countries, have signed up on international agreements for gender equality, women's rights. We have several frameworks, really, that address the just transition, that address the need to invest in women's participation in green, blue economies, but also in the care economy. We had, for instance, don't know how much of you are familiar with our jargon, CSW, the Convention on the Status of Women, which is really the big annual framework of the United Nations on women's rights. And the one in 2022 was really more directed, I would say, to the questions of gender-responsive just transition. And we do have paragraphs, I won't cite them, we have 54, we have paragraph 20, but which set the framework. So it is at the same time a responsibility and an obligation in terms of legal norms that we all have signed up with. That's one dimension. The second dimension, I think if we look at, as I said, women's participation and contribution, unless we have, and I think a key learning for us has been, and I'm talking more for Asia, Latin America, Eastern European countries, has been really access to finance, technologies, assets more broadly. But access to finance certainly has been a main bottleneck. One, because either, Clara mentioned, right, the risk, the institutional cultures of the banking sector, of others, but without that specific action, without that specific encouragement in access to financing, it will not happen. We can talk later about several examples of UN Women's work in partnership with IFIs or with the private sector, which have really made inroads for women's engagement in new tech, we have examples of climate-smart agriculture, AI use, really networking amongst women's organizations and the use of digital platforms to make products available, because you were talking as well about, women needing to join up and that sort of sorority in the process as well. I think one of those, maybe just to talk about Vietnam, when we had really interesting results and we scaled it up in Cambodia and in Bangladesh, was a very small cooperative in the tea sector, right, tea production. And with really linking the banking sector, access to finance, new technologies, and the women's cooperative, not only were they able, of course, to scale up the job, to have a production, I won't go into details, but that was really respectful of environmental norms, but also, I would say, to really become main actors, not just of local development, but at the more political level, because that's the other really gap, which maybe wasn't mentioned that much, is that we do not have women, or we have very, very few women at the top of either industries or investment sectors in those areas. And we do have very little women at the decision-making table, at the political level, locally, nationally, regionally on these areas. So while we will not have diversity there, women's interests and demands, of course, will not be reflected, and this is not just for women, this is for all of us. Women make up 50% of any society, so you can't play, I used to say you can't play football with half of the team, right? So this is not gonna work for anybody. Another important dimension then is data. This is really a sector, there's been a lot of investment in gender-sensitive data, in disaggregated data, but really when it comes to the crosscuts of transformation, of economies in the green, blue sectors and others, and women, men, with the age, we don't have a lot of data. We know, of course, that girls engage a lot less in those sectors, and this is because of a lot of the the determinants that came up. Stereotypes are a very, very important part. As long as we don't have role models or specific incentives, of course, they don't see themselves necessarily as legitimate in those sectors. But then we have also, and I'll finish on that because then we can pick up more for the questions, the whole care sector, care economy, which is basically the fact that all over the world, and Europe is no exception, women bear the burden of caring for children, elderly, domestic work, and others. The latest data from the European Institute for Gender Equality, I think, talks about 2.5 hours more daily for women than men. In some countries in the south, we have figures around 7 hours more, because it includes, of course, fetching wood, water, and others which are not technology facilitated necessarily. And this means simply that women don't have the time. So when we think of capacity building, when we think of access to finance, when we think of, peer learning, a key policy to put in place is really redistributing care work, because this leads to time poverty for women, and this means that regardless of all investments in the other determinants that we saw, they will just not have the time to engage. And as long as that's not a core policy, we will not have women in those sectors, and we will not have women in other sectors either, but precisely in the one that's leveraging the economy. Now, UN Women has been working a lot on care policies all over the world, and this means basically, again, having a strong framework, and I think there the EU has the care strategy, which was recently adopted, which is really a major milestone, and definitely several EU member states, but also in other regions, have embarked on national legislation, which is very, very important. This means investments in social protection, which is also linked closely to the just transition, because if you don't have a safety network, if you don't have anywhere women can fall back on or can free their time, it is just not going to work for women, and it is not going to work for anybody. So I think if I need to take three main takeaways for us at UN Women, has been really having a legal framework, global, regional, national, local, having the policies in place, not just in terms of accessing economic assets and others, but really thinking of care, social protection as accelerators, is bringing in that, I would say, human rights approach, so looking not just at women who naturally, of course, are in a better position to compete and to be entrepreneurs, but looking at women in local communities, indigenous. For us, it has been a lot looking at indigenous and Afro descent communities in Latin America or others, because at the end of the day, those are the women on the ground who are doing agriculture and who are already aware of the impacts of climate change and proceeding to the just transition, but maybe on a less technologized way. So they're the ones that we really need to work with because of the local knowledge, but also for. Meaning access to technology and finance are really key. And I think I'll stop there. We can have a lot of other points that we can pick up or examples. Thank you.
Florence, thank you very much. I have a million questions that I have here, but I'm going to give the opportunity to Catherine to speak, and then we'll have a collection of questions again from the audience and also from our panel and from myself. So if Catherine is teed up and is online, then Catherine, you'll give us the context from you, from the JETP Secretariat, so your best practices on supporting female entrepreneurship. Thank you so much again for being with us.
Yes. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you for the JTP Conference Committee for this intervention. It is an honor for me to address in this forum. So before we starting, I think I give an introduction a little bit regarding my country in Indonesia. So Indonesia is committed to the energy transition itself. In its enhanced NDC, Indonesia commits to cutting its carbon emission by 31.89% against the BAU, and it's also set a net zero target in 2060. In November 2020, the GOI and the international partnership, EU is there. We have make a CIPP. We commit to make like a partnership, comprehensive investment and policy plan, that is we call it CIPP. And inside of the CIPP, chapter 6, there's a just transition. And then this CIPP are using as a guidance for some people that are needed. So the gender equality and empowerment is become one of the importance in just transition in Indonesia. So as you know, that Indonesia is the biggest country in Southeast Asia with a population more than 270 million people. And then with a different kind of culture and ethnic group. So this was become a background of how to become a barrier in what is the barrier or the challenging for the women entrepreneurship in our country itself. So if you see in here, one of the barrier is like, not barrier, it's a challenge. In order to support the energy transition, a role of women is important, although only a few women are involved in energy sectors. But the data in 2021, that is almost 64.5% of MSMEs in Indonesia were held by the women. Although only 5% as the decision-making position. However, there are still some challenging identified in our country for women as an entrepreneur. One is the cultural and social barriers, like high societal expectation and conservative gender roles, which dictates women to prioritize household duty over running a business. So for example, should asking permission from the husband. And then religious beliefs strongly influence how women conduct business, and then promoting ethical practice. And this religion will become influence the culture itself. Then two is the education and then skill gaps. So gender mainstreaming and gender targets in skill development could empower women to move from low skill and entry-level position to high-skill jobs, supporting the growth of their sustainable enterprise. And then the less access to formal education, technical skills, and business training, significant gender gap in the STEM and renewable sectors, despite the expectation for the green job opportunities to increase by 2040. And then the third is the limited access for funding. It is still in the first one, the first slide. So limited access to the funding, like lack of collateral, gender bias, credit history, and other stringent lending requirement, and then limited knowledge of financial products, and then could be reducing ability to access the right financial tool. And then the balancing family and business. So it is a double burden of managing business while also being a primary caregiver in their family, and lack of affordable childcare service also is become like a challenge in Indonesia. So slide 2. So as we can see in the slide, the fact that lots of things that female actually can entrepreneurship could be involved in, such as renewable opportunities in solar, wind, bioenergy sector, can be avenues for the female business. And then energy efficiency solution, like designing, marketing, and producing energy efficient product, and then educational and advocacy of the enterprise. Women also can be involved in the waste to energy solution. and also like sustainable agriculture. So, slide, things like next slide, please. So, and then there's quite lots of opportunity actually for the just transition, women just transition entrepreneurship. So first that we identify is the gender gap integration in energy policies. So ensure that national and regional policies supporting the woman entrepreneurship, woman participations, and then access to finance and resources. So enhance access to finance for female entrepreneurs through grant, microloans, or public-private partnership. Focus on the sustainable energy startups probably. And then women access to financing mechanism can be improved by supporting alternative financial models such as blended finance, venture capital, and then gender responsive public procurement. That is some sample. And then the capacity building and the skill development for women itself, for women entrepreneur, and then supportive ecosystem and networks will be the important thing when we want their participation more. The other thing is like the gender responsive procurement probably is become one of the idea. And then the last one is the data collection and monitoring. So the collect and monitoring sex disks to the great data to track the participation of the woman in energy transition is a driven approach to ensure that female entrepreneurs are not left behind and help in adjusting policy to help better support in their involvement in renewable energy. I think that is from me. And then in the slides, you can see that some initiative already done in Indonesia, like conducted by like Copernic and then by UNDP. Is it the education program and training? We call it Sri Kandi. And then also the access to funding. There's an orange board in Indonesia just starting for women, and then like initiative promote to women welfare. So there's only a sample of the project that already done in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you. So I'm sure you're as struck as I am about the complementarity between the answers that we had on the Slido and a lot of the points that Florence and Catherine have been making. And I'm particularly struck, we're all struck by things. I mean, the finance thing is really, for me, absolutely essential. And you were nodding, Florence, I saw when Catherine was also making the point. And I think about the expectations. And Catherine, you said something which I think for us in Europe is interesting in the terms of culture and society. You said that women have to ask permission from their husbands. I think we have to take account of these very different experiences that there are. And these things are very real barriers in some cases. And we need to be aware of them and not be afraid to mention them if they're relevant. Are there questions, comments, reflections from the audience or online at the moment? Did I spot a hand there? If what you're thinking, I come Florence back to you. So again, back on the finance, you said two things, or many things. You said the difficulty of access to finance, and you also said, as we know, that there are few women at the top of all the organizations that are making decisions. So how do you bridge this, where you need women to get finance, but the traditional financial organizations are run by people who don't see the special needs and what might be appropriate in terms of facilitating women entrepreneurship? How do you get around that?
I think there's, like you say, the data in all regions shows this, so that's the baseline we're starting from. Now, there's been different strategies across different regions, continents, types of institutions. I think if we think, for instance, of the European Union, there's the directive on women on boards, right? Linking with the private sector, several countries have adopted similar measures, legislation, going from, let's say, more positive action in terms of quotas. Parity, we're not there on boards. We're there in politics for some countries, but when I say we're there, we're not there with the data. We're there because the legislation's there, right? But definitely without those incentives, we will not make it. I was speaking yesterday with colleagues, giving a presentation more on women's economic empowerment, the Sustainable Development Goals, and others. And we assess that if we keep up at the same speed, we will have, or at the same speed and rate of investments in gender equality and certainly participation and others, we will need, I think it's another 137 years to have equality. So definitely we need positive action. I think it's not a question of ideology, it's a question of rights, fairness, and it's a question of when you have half of the population, like I said, that it's not participating, you're jeopardizing your chances as a society. So this is one way, of course, to do it, is set the framework. Then you have other sets of incentives. One of the areas of work that UN Women advanced on a lot with the private sector is called the Women's Empowerment Principles. And these are a set of 7 principles where companies sign up to. We do now have, I think, over 1,000 CEOs globally, from very large multinational companies to smaller domestic companies all over the world. I would say it works very well in Latin America. In Asia, we have had ambitious programs, but we do have in Africa, in all of the sectors, banking, construction, I mean, all of them. And this is really a journey to take the company through embarking on a more female, let's say, or women enabling environment for them to achieve those positions, to influence decision, because like we saw it, there's of course a culture which is male-dominated because men have been most of the ones in decision-making for historical reasons. So of course it's been built up in mentalities and stereotypes around that. And in that journey, we help them to make a diagnosis of the main bottlenecks, and we help them set out the strategies. One of them, of course, is not just the measures inside of the company, because oftentimes it's made of gender biases in pay, in salary, it's made of gender biases in promotion, which are not necessarily conscious. So it's not to judge, it's not to, and it's more in a positive lens. And that's what companies have liked as well, to say, look, it's a bit of a competition with the other sector. We have petroleum industry in Argentina, we have a lot of those. It is also about like you mentioned, gender-sensitive procurement, and that's a very, very important one, because we know that in a lot of countries, and all countries here in Europe as well, still public works, public construction, or just public procurement more broadly is one of the main employers. So that's where you can make a difference. And we have several countries or municipalities, localities, and that's important because sometimes it's more feasible even at the local level, that you set up gender-sensitive procurement with quotas, with, you know, those are the number of women that we want, and when you get your bid out and you get the offers, it's not enough. So of course you also need to work with women's companies to make them competitive to submit, but definitely it is not happening because naturally we work with the same people, we know each other. So I think this is one important element. So I would encourage you to look at the women's empowerment principles on our website, because it goes for, of course, a lot of the private sector, but there are some principles that adequate nicely for the public sector as well.
Thank you so much, Florence. Thank you. We're going to move on to the second part of our panel session. So here we're going to have very concrete examples from European territories in transition. So Lina, first of all to you. So WENCOOP is your organization, so Women in Energy, and how you've been starting an energy project. Oops, sorry. As you wish. Here's fine. If you're up there, it's fine. Whatever you prefer.
Good day. Thank you for having me here as a speaker. It is very precious for us. I come from Greece. I'm the president of the Greek Business Women Association and at the same time the president of WENCOOP. And it is all about entrepreneurship at the end. First, a small introductory, because it was really vital on how this initiative really started. And WENCOOP actually WinCoop is an initiative of the Greek Business Women Association. The association works in 2 levels. One is with existing entrepreneurs in order to support their entrepreneurial journey. And the second one is about supporting more women into being more active into the economy. That means about marginalized groups, but also at the same time sectors of the economy where women are underrepresented. So just 4 years ago, it was November 2020, when we came across with some studies mentioning that women in green are just less than 5% of the global economy, in some regions 3%, 2%, which were really very small percentages. And then it arises the question, why? Why women are having so small percentages? So we started having some initiatives, some work groups with our members, with stakeholders to identify what is out there. And we were coming across with important stakeholders, global stakeholders in green, that they had the belief that this is not a women's world. Energy is not a women's world. Green energy is not a women's field. So the decision had been made because generally in the association, what we are doing is that we are identifying an issue, we are designing a project, we don't wait for somebody to finance the project, and we aim for the solution or a best practice to be afterwards promoted that, look, we have done it. So we came across with a model of energy communities. It seemed right, it seemed equal, it seemed fair, it seemed socially responsible, it seemed everything that we nurture in our association. So we said, let's start the first energy community, which would be female only. It sounded simple, and we said, let's do it, simple in our minds. But we never thought what this journey would bring. Designing a project like that was, I cannot even express my feelings. It was such a big challenge. Hearing for 1.5 years simply no's. No, you cannot do that. No, you cannot find that. No, there is no solution to that. No, 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 no. So the result is there. We turned every no's to yes. Now we are best practice example, and thank you for that, because it was what maybe drove us that far away. And to be honest, we didn't know here from the Commission, but we did hear a lot of no's from our local government, regional government, national government, stakeholders, everybody else. We were too small to reach the Commission at that level. So right now, we have been empowering women in the energy sector, and we are proving that we can do it. So WeCoop aims to support women entrepreneurs in energy by offering tools, training, networking for launching and managing successful energy projects. We focus on renewable energy. The cooperative promotes renewable energy solutions, enabling women to lead projects in solar, wind, and other sustainable energy sectors. And we have a very wide community and cooperative model through a cooperative approach, fostering collaboration among women. But the energy community itself, it's already a producer. We have 3.2 megawatts of production. We have more than 80 women that they are partners. We are not going on a larger scale, but we are supporting other women to build their own energy communities, and this is due to restrictions of the Greek legislation, not due to the fact that we don't have women that they would like to participate. And we are going also into the storage industry right now. But the most important is that we have been reached out by women started from Norway to Cyprus, from Italy to Azerbaijan, from Djibouti to Indonesia, that have heard about that, because we have been registered in the UN as the best practice, because they are the first initiative women-led that finally made it. So I don't know if we were efficient, but we were really stubborn. That I can say that. They even tried to push me from the stairs, but you see that even with a cane, I'm here still in the conferences speaking about our example. So next slide, please. The key messages is that women are more than suitable for a career in green economy. There is nothing that we cannot do there, and it is an important message. Our project is not the biggest in size. There are huger projects than us in green energy, but maybe it's one of the bigger in social impact and in messaging. Women can do it. When obstacles appear, find a way to overcome them. We managed to have financing pulled out by the banks when there was not there already a given example of large-scale energy communities in Greece that got financing before us. We negotiated so hard, we pushed all the buttons, knowing the European legislation, and we managed to get 2.5 million apart from our crowdfunding. Green economy is a new economy, so it is the time to hop on the bus and demand the equal shares. We are talking about other industries. If we are talking about typical industrial economy, it was, as we said about the decision-making there, a lot before us, many years, many centuries. So it needs a huge capital, and there's already the stereotype, and there are already generations of industrial men. You need to have something really different, and a sponsor, financial support to go into there. Green economy, circular economy, and all this modern type of economy need knowledge, skills, determination, and support mechanisms. And about support mechanisms, maybe in some countries it's not as friendly as in others, but at all points there are supportive networks and best practices. And we are in an era where information is all around us. It doesn't need to come to our homes to knock on the door. We can just Google, we can AI, we can do anything we want and find who is out there that could support our entrepreneurial journey, either if this is in green or whatever journey. So this generation and this time of humanity, we don't have the excuse of, I didn't know. There is no such excuse. There was an excuse in my times, I'm almost 50, but now there is no such excuse. If somebody wants to do something, pull out the information, knock on doors, maybe the first door will be closed, but somewhere there you will find a supportive network that will be willing to assist you. Not all of them are active, not all of them are willing, but some are, so go and find them. And involving more women in green should be a priority and an active strategy. It shouldn't be an ad hoc activity. What really saddens me is that usually we have a project-based policy, we have a project, we are very happy about that. We say how many, are the KPIs, how many women should I support? 20, done, and that's it. I leave the room, I have my KPIs, and that's it. I think that there should be a qualitative index where when the project finishes, does this organization continue working on the target group? If yes, this is an organization that I would support in the future as well. Either this is private, public, mixed, or whatever, I don't care. But working, and not only about women and green, but generally on organizations that they come like starlights, come and go on with project money, is not efficient anymore. Either we pull strategies, we make it happen, we have call to actions and continuation. Otherwise, the change will not happen. And as Florence already said, it's not about if it is what I want to do about the future or who wants to do something about the future. It's about equal chances are equal rights. So it is about finance, it's about economy. When half the population is actually fulfilling all their potentials, we have a quicker developing economy. It is that simple. If you don't believe in human rights and you believe in economy, take this as granted. If you are believing in both, which is fine, anyhow, women should be involved. Thank you.
Lena, thank you so much for that. You explained how you went from people telling you why should women be doing this, and hearing the no, 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 to yes, 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 and getting past it. It's incredibly inspiring. Thank you so much. Aileen is next, so from Greenacre Marketing and the Grass Ceiling Project, to explain supporting female entrepreneurship in rural communities. We have a few more minutes. Please do stay with us. You have a very long lunch break, so you don't have to rush to get the food. It will be there. So just another few minutes, because I think it's such an interesting discussion. I would really like to have the opportunity to talk with you as well. Aileen, the floor is yours.
And mine will be quick, so don't worry. So thank you firstly for the invitation, and it's an honour to not only represent my own personal business journey and the challenges that I faced in entrepreneurship, but also to represent the European-wide grass ceiling project, which I'm part of, and I'll elaborate a little bit on the end. But just to give you an introduction, if we have my introductory slide there, yes. So listening to this morning's sessions and listening to what everybody is saying, my piece is quite fitting with the stereotypes that I faced in Ireland in terms of my entrepreneurial journey. I grew up on a farm surrounded by cows and horses, and was actively involved in all that comes with growing up on a farm. My mum had been a nurse. She gave up work to stay at home to be the primary caregiver. I had one older brother, so the prospect of me ever taking over the home farm would have been unheard of. And I suppose as I was growing up, I was coming off the back of, up to 1973, there was actually a ban on women working in public and civil service jobs. So once they got married, they had to give up work. So my mum came off the end of that, so as a result she stayed at home, and that was probably something that I am the first generation in our family coming out of. So as I said, the prospect of me taking over the farm would have been unheard of. So I studied agribusiness to try and figure out what opportunities might lie that I could remain connected to agriculture, because it was an area that I was deeply passionate and involved in. So again, I need to point out that this is no longer the case. There are lots of opportunities and varied career paths in agriculture at this point. But there are so many stereotypes in my introduction, and given the short time, I'm going to skip on to years later to setting up my own business, which is Greenacre Marketing, and how thankfully lots has changed, but we are still work in progress. Challenges, many, supports few. My business was considered a me too, with no unique point of difference. And even though we would go on to be the only dedicated marketing agency to the agricultural sector of such scale, this business now supports over 60 agri-businesses that have both Irish and global operations. The business was set up while I was on my second maternity leave. I should mention, part of my personal journey is very much, I'm mum to 4 girls, 13, 11, 6 and 3. I have to think about that. So the biggest challenge was driving a business forward while having a young family. And unfortunately for women, if you choose to have a family, this is the time in your life when both your career opportunities and having a family will coincide, and that is reality. I would also go on to say that as far as women are concerned, I think they enter into entrepreneurship for one of 2 reasons. Working for yourself gives you increased flexibility because that's required in terms of lack of adequate childcare. And I think that's a really unfortunate way of starting your business. The other side, people genuinely set up a business because they found a really good idea that they think can be a really successful business idea. And I'm very thankful that that's what took me into entrepreneurship. But one thing's really important to me in entrepreneurship is that I recognise that being a mum comes first. And I work hard so that we can have many fun times as a family. But women shouldn't hide behind this, and this is something I'm really passionate about. Women are reluctant to turn down jobs for reasons around their children, for the fear it'll question their commitment. In fact, I actually almost turned down this opportunity to come here and speak because the first thing came into my head was, what's my husband's diary like? Who's going to bring one of the kids to gymnastics Tuesday night? Who's going to bring them Wednesday night? How am I going to figure this out? But I said yes, and here I am. As a business leader, I believe we have a role to play in having the conversation and empowering women to be open and not to hide behind any pressure with juggling work and family life. Unfortunately, childcare support in Ireland is currently too rigid and private childcare is expensive. So we do have good support in Ireland for childcare, but it's rigid, it's 9 to 5. So just to move on from my entrepreneurial journey, which has been hugely rewarding, and I'm delighted to front a really successful business. But I was also invited to get involved in a project called the Grass Ceiling Project. And sorry, I should have asked to click on probably 3 slides ago. If you want to click on to the grass ceiling. So this is a 3-year project funded by the European Union. And looks at the innovation needs of young farming and rural women innovators in the southeast region. And I'm delighted to be part of this. It's a 3-year project. It offers a space and a time to work on business concepts, to explore opportunities, and really map out and highlight the challenges faced by women in rural-based entrepreneurship. I'm aware of many other challenges we face, and they've been mentioned in the Slido, they've been mentioned in other presentations around financial burdens, gender bias, and all of that. And I've just honed in on the caregiver and the childcare one because it's one that was very much part of my journey. I'll finish by saying I'm extremely grateful for the amazing team of men and women that I work with every day who ensure Greenacre Marketing is a very open and supportive environment, and obviously grateful that I had a family network to support me in my journey too. Thank you.
Aileen, thank you so much for sharing your personal journey. I found it very, very moving, and it's always reassuring when you focus in and you say it without hiding. It's important. Managing your family, and your family is your priority. And this is something that women, often more than men, but not always. Many men are also looking after the children and taking care, but looking after the family is a key part of being able, for men and women, to be able to take forward their entrepreneurial journey. So thank you for sharing your journey and addressing it so frankly. Are there any questions and comments from you, either here in the room, questions, hands in the air, or online? Anyone moved to share their own experience? I mean, it's been overwhelming for me, I must say. I'm almost, hearing so much from you. But we have, did you want to say something? Yeah, can we have a microphone? The microphone is at the back, but it's coming forward. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Daria Taurizano. I work for CINEA, and I work for a program which is part of the Just Transition Mechanism, the 3rd pillar. So I would like really to thank all the speakers today because it was, for me, extremely inspiring event, and I really loved your contributions. I would like just to ask a question to any of the speakers. I noticed that in the podium there are only women, and however I noticed that there are a lot of men in the audience. Is there anything that you would like to say to the men colleagues in order to bring them more on board in your view, in your program, in your projects? Because we had the comment that was given by our last speaker that was very encouraging because there is this dialogue. But is there anything else that you would like to say to the men in order to bridge maybe the gap, if there is any gap to bridge? Thank you.
Yeah, Florence, briefly. Yeah.
You can say it more maybe from the heart and experience. What we know in terms of data, as I think you phrased it as well, it's not just a question of rights or the heart at the good place, it's good for business. We know that more women on boards, more women in the economy, more women leading, and that diversity overall leads to an increase in productivity, leads to an increase in consumption of certain products, because consumers are also becoming increasingly conscious. So the companies that have really embarked on a journey of diversity have had clear economic returns. But I think men beyond that are also moved by, hearts and good intentions. And what we hear a lot, and it's not sufficient and it's a bit essentialist, but of course that, I have a wife, I have girls, or from ministers, of finance who are not necessarily very sensitive. But when it comes to children, I think if we all look at our children, boys and girls, I think we would like all of them to have better chances. So whether you speak at it from an economic rationale or really from a more personal standpoint, it is definitely together that will make a difference and a better world. I'm not being too idealistic as the UN, but I think it's not either or, it is really hand in hand.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, we are not enemies. We are not two sectors that we are fighting with each other. But if first women don't believe in their potential, then they cannot convince also men. Of course, when we're talking about younger age, in schooling, in doing training for children or even toddlers, we do include both genders. But at the level that we are right now, if first we don't attract the female audience to understand what we are doing, they are not going to be able to convince their colleagues in the office. We have trained more than 1,000 women the last 2 years in Greece on this sector. Now they're building a small energy community in a place called Messenia. It's on the southern part of Greece. We had the training with 100 women. We had consultation, we had mentoring, we had everything. And in the last phase, when they were ready to sign, we had men, their husbands and their fathers in the room, that we had to convince them to accept the decision of their wives, daughters, and everything. So for me, at that point, I had lost part of the result. So when we are focusing on women, we are just result-centric in order to help them find their full potential, not because we don't like men. I'm a mother of 2. I'm a carer of 2 more men. I have men around me at home. I love them. I cherish them. I have a lot of colleagues in the office, but I'm pointing out my speech to women because you are the ones who are going to convince your male allies when you go home or when you go to your office. So maybe the question is, do everybody here in the room when we are talking? Because I have never heard a question about, I apologize for not having gender balance, but we are a male-only panel. Never. And I have never heard about a question, and I don't want to offend by no means, that are you okay if women are not attending? They're not interested. So raise up a little bit your egos, raise up a little bit your potential, and men who are healthy thinking, they will never stop you. So first we change ourselves, and not with hateful feelings about men, by no means.
Just before Aileen, maybe Catherine, did you want to come in on this question as well before I give the floor to Aileen?
Yeah, thank you. I also like mother with the two sons. So yeah, for me, like the gender balance is if we can do the gender balance, it will be have a more better result for the all of the project or all of the participation that we make. But what I emphasize in here, in some places, that the women sometimes don't have any chance or any opportunity to improve or to get developed by themselves. For example, the one that staying in the rural area and everything in my country. So we should more support them so they can develop as well. That is my opinion. That is my point of view. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Aileen, please.
Yeah, I'm not going to elaborate hugely on it, just to come back to the point of not to hide behind it, and I take responsibility for it as a business leader to, when I get up from my desk on a Thursday evening and my God, it's a rush to the swimming pool, that I get up and say, sorry guys, I have to go, I have to be in the pool in half an hour. And it's to work hard, but just don't be afraid to have that conversation that you need to be somewhere else.
Thank you so much to all of the panelists. I mean, I can't begin to summarize and to collect all of the fantastic contributions that you've made. As I say, I was almost overwhelmed by the richness of the discussion, genuinely. I mean, I found everything that you said so constructive and so helpful for hopefully those of you in regions who find this important. I'm going to close just with 3 things that I noted down that I found interesting, and I hope that they can stay in your minds a little bit. I mean, the first thing, Alina, you said, it's not about KPIs. So we're not doing this because we think we just need to tick a box somewhere. I think anyone starting from this point hasn't really understood what we're trying to say here. So I think it's not about KPIs. The other point, the second point, what can just transition bring for gender, but what can gender bring for just transition? It's not only a one-way benefit, it's in both ways. I think it's really important to remember this two-way channel. And the third thing I finish with what you said, Florence, you can't play football with half a team. So you need everybody. You need everyone to be engaged in this process, this difficult process that we're all pursuing. So let's bring in the women in the way that we can, as constructively, bringing their best potential, as you've all shown. So again, a huge thank you to all of you for your contributions. Thank you.